Praise the Lord. Have you ever heard the phrase scapegoat? You know, um, actually, it comes out of the Bible, Leviticus 16. When there's the Day of Atonement, there's two sacrifices made. One is actually sacrificed, and then the other, the blood is applied, and he's prayed over this little goat that all the sin and shame of the Israelite people would be symbolically transferred to this goat, and then he would be taken out into a wilderness and set free to wander, to pass their sins and shame off or forward for another year. You know? And they would do this every year. Can you imagine how many poor little scapegoats were left wandering around in the wilderness, carrying around the shame and blame of others? There's a lot at this point. But this was my thought. Today in life, a lot of us are scapegoating. We're either carrying around the shame and blame or the hurt and the labels that people have put upon us that really was someone else's sin and shame, or we project and use a defense mechanism and project our sin and shame onto other people because we don't want to look at and accept accountability for what we're doing. So we're scapegoating. We're living our life under the labels and the definitions of what other people have put upon us. Your family has a history of drugs and alcohol. Just because you're in that family, they've already labeled you as, well, they're just going to be another drug addict or another alcoholic. You don't have to be, but they've already projected that forward, that shame and blame. They've symbolically casted it upon you. If you're in a situation and you butt heads with somebody, sometimes they will project, and cast all the shame and blame on you. There's no way they had any fault in this situation. It was entirely you. They make that quite clear, that you're the problem, not them. And we'll get to where we'll just walk around and carry that all the time. All those labels, all that shame, all that blame, all that burden that's been upon us, from childhood on, all these labels and definitions that have been defining our family has been slapped on us, like the generational curses, just hurtful words, heavy weights. They're all yokes, they're all bondage. And yet we walk around as a scapegoat, just aimlessly wandering around, carrying this burden every day. And you don't have to. I am not defined by my family's bad decisions. Okay. I am not defined by whatever abuse came in my life as a child. I am not defined by someone else's bad actions that they have projected off on me that I'm the problem. I have to learn to define myself the way God has defined me. And in doing so, I have to know His Word. I have to know what He said about me. I have to know how He feels about me. I have to know how to connect with Him so that I'm not forever carrying around the shame, blame, and guilt that everyone else has cast into my life. As a kid, we don't realize what our parents passed over to us. We don't see it. And sometimes even way up until adult years, we don't realize how much our parents had negatively impacted us and didn't even mean to. Most parents do not mean to negatively impact their children. Most do not. They're doing what they can in the moment, the best that they can in that moment. And they don't realize in any way that it's been a negative impact on your life. But when we become adults, we're accountable for us. And we have to get to a place that we recognize what negative impacts our families, friends, communities, environments have had on us as an individual. My oldest daughter was talking to me one time about being in school. And when they were younger, they both had a lot of self-confidence, and they enjoyed who they were. And I noticed just as much as she did when we hit this one school system, because of the way they handled their food program at lunchtime, they negatively impacted my daughter. So she went from being confident in herself to start doubting herself. She really started scrutinizing, picking herself apart because of the foods that she was eating, because of what the school system was teaching about food, healthy food choices, bad food choices. By the time 1 year, just 1 year of being in the school here, 1 year, I don't even think they had a full year, but in that 1 year, okay, she went from being very positive about who she was and comfortable with her self-image. In 1 year, she really had an eating disorder. 1 year, and I could tell there was problems, but I didn't realize how much of a problem. And now here she is, 21 this year, but last year is when we were talking about it. And she was talking about how much the food program really made her doubt herself, look down on herself, really think she wasn't good enough because of the food she ate. And it was a school system. By the time they sit there and pulled the food apart as to what was good and bad and how you're making bad choices and bad decisions and you're ruining your health, these are children. They cannot make decisions for themselves. The parents have to buy the food and prepare it and put it in the lunchbox and send it to school. But the way the program was handled, my daughter had took it as a personal attack that she was wrong, that she wasn't good enough in what she was choosing for herself. And she ended up with an eating disorder, even a body dysmorphia problem. She had a really hard time seeing who she really was, all because of the way they shamed and blamed over food. So when you stop and look about it, how many times in our lives have we became the world's scapegoat? How many times has everyone around us shamed and blamed us because of the situation we're in, or the family we're from, the foods we eat, the clothes we wear? How many times have we been in a situation that has negatively impacted us, and we're walking around in that? We're walking around carrying those things with us, and we don't recognize it at first for what it is, and it's just another tool of the devil to tear us down. No one has the right to shame and blame others. No one has a right to pick someone else's life apart. You should never have to stand before others and allow them to tear you apart, that you're not even good enough for God. God said, come to me as you are. Come to me as you are. He accepts you unconditionally, right where you're at. He accepts you wholeheartedly, and yet we're still holding this baggage. We're holding it. Everyone around us can label and tear you down. And they don't mean to be negative towards you. Some people do. Some people negatively impact you, and they want to hurt you. But anytime people do things that tear you down, they're not aware most of the time that that's a tool of the devil. Anytime to steal, tear down, and kill and destroy, that's of the devil. Even the food program that was put in place to the school system to teach them healthy ways of eating, the way that it was implemented was a tool of the devil, because it stole the joy and peace from my daughter. And that's the problem. So we need to get to a place in our lives and sit down and look at what is robbing me of my peace. God said, I'm His. Come to Him as I am. He said He loved me. unconditionally. He said he would guide me where I need to go. So what is it in my life, in my past, in my environment now that is actually making me so down, making me unhappy, and taking and robbing me of my joy and my peace, my serenity? And when you stop and look at it, the harbored hard feelings towards hurtful name calling, hurtful labels given to you even by school systems, hurtful labels from doctors and doctor's appointments, hurtful labels like generational curses, because I'm in this family, I have to be this kind of person. When you sit down and look at it, then you start recognizing what tools the devil had placed in your life to tear you down. Don't be a scapegoat anymore. Don't let the world harm your peace of mind. Don't let them fashion and shape you. They didn't create you. They didn't fashion and make you. God did. So if you want to know the truth of who you are and what your purpose is to God, you need to get in your prayer closet. You need to get in your word, and you need to be seeking him over it. But stop living and fulfilling those labels that everybody else smacked upon you, saying that's what you are. I'm not somebody's scapegoat. I'm not sitting here taking on what everybody else dishes at me. I am God's creation. I'm the apple of his eye, and I don't have to live in a state of being down and depressed, doomed and gloomed all the time because of what the world has thrown at me. And it's the world that does it, because those things carnal are not of God. You got to be spiritually minded, and you have to dwell on those positive attributes, those positive, true, honest, kind, loving, positive attributes of not just yourself but the world around you. Don't take the negative. Don't take the shame and blame. Don't take the label. I'm not going to be what everybody else decided. I'm going to be what God has decided, because it's in him that I will find my joy, peace, happiness, and everything else. So I pray that all of you recognize how you've become someone's scapegoat, that you can get yourself out of that label and stop wandering around aimlessly and actually rise up and work in purpose for God. Because until you rise up in purpose, you're still scapegoating. You're still wandering around in the wilderness, wondering who you are, defining yourself by what everybody else has thrown at you. Stop scapegoating. Rise up and be spiritually minded, a new spiritual creation, and live spiritually in purpose unto God. That's what we're to do. I'm not going to live in the world no more, and I ain't going to be scapegoating. No, they can go elsewhere with that label. Love you guys, and holding you in prayers. No more scapegoating. We live victoriously in Jesus Christ. Bye.